Hello and welcome to Fiber Trek. My name is Sarah. Welcome. You are most welcome to my studio space here in the North Woods of Maine. I am going to catch you up on all of the knitted items, both finished and recently cast on. I take you on a field trip to PortFiber in Portland, and we get to chat with Casey and her work, both in dyeing and with the Cashmere People yarns. I am deeply grateful for all those that choose to contribute through Patreon to support this podcast. I'm so glad you're all here. Let's catch up.
Hey, darling, can I tell you what's been on my mind? Sick and tired of the 9 to 5 in the city life. Darling, we could get out of town, see the beautiful world around, wanna see it now. Pack our bags and get in that car, leave a little note and we'll drive real far. Let's get out, we can leave this city, let's drive to the open. Yeah, the countryside is so pretty, with the wind blowing in your hair. We can look back someday, baby, don't you understand that we only get one life? I wanna make it count, honey, come on now and take my hand. Hey, darling, I love it when it's me and you on the road with a couple of tunes in a car for two. Hey, darling, you know we're gonna have a really good time, driving in the middle of the night when the stars are bright. Pack our bags and get in that car, leave a little note and we'll drive real far. Let's get out, we can leave this city, let's drive to the open air. Yeah, the countryside is so pretty, with the wind blowing in your hair. When we wake, hear the birds and see the sun. Side by side our fears are done. Oh, the good times just begun. Oh, we know what we have, let's hold on tight. Found what we're looking for in life. Call us crazy, but things are finally right. With you and I, the future is bright. Oh, you and I, we got it. Oh, we don't need no more. Oh, even in the hard times, you and I can weather any storm.
As you can see, Rob and I, and most notably, I think, Ruby, had a pretty spectacular weekend opening up our friend's camp. The last time we were here was in March, and I included an episode detailing that snowmobile and ski trip, which also featured ski planes. At that time, we rearranged our trail cameras there to see if we could catch some more local wildlife, and we left one trail camera on this access trail here, which we use to get to Hugapine. We have to take a canoe across a small inlet and then hike in. And so Rob got to visit one of his favorite spots. We also left a trail camera at the end of the driveway where we drive in, and I featured some footage of that on our walk and on the driving portion at the beginning of the vlog. And so I really am looking forward to sharing with you some of the video and stills that we captured. So it will be a mix of this spring season and winter season. And in order, there will be a bear and a coyote. I feature a moose and a fisher. And at the end, we get some stills of a Canada lynx. We were pretty excited to achieve this feat as they are pretty aloof and rare to see, although Rob has seen many of them. All the same, I hope you enjoy a little wildlife feature upcoming, and I will look forward to bringing you more because we left the trail cameras up there. I was thrilled that Casey of PortFiber was willing to host me in her shop and talk about not only the importation of Cashmere People yarns, but also allow me the opportunity to tour and showcase all that she has going on. She includes not only the knitting yarns, but also a variety of felting projects, weaving projects, and correlative materials that you would need for that. She has 2 massive walls of yarns that are not just Cashmere People yarns, including Spin Cycle, Harrisville Designs, Peace Fleece. You can also find a variety of spinning fibers, which she dyes herself. She has 2 custom blends done, which I will detail a little bit more in my upcoming fiber section. You can also find a variety of local produced wools. PortFiber is located in Portland, Maine, although you can find Casey on the web, as well as a variety of shows, including the Maine Fiber Frolic, which is happening at the Windsor Fairgrounds the first weekend in June. I had such a great day out going in to visit with Casey, and she was so generous with her time and showing me around and including some of the behind the scenes look at her dye work. If you would like to catch that video, it will be available to patrons over on the website there. But I'm going to let Casey tell you the story behind the shop and the Cashmere People yarns. Well, I am so psyched that you, okay, take 3. So I am so excited to be here with Casey of PortFiber here in Portland, Maine. And I wanted to give you some opportunity to listen to Casey's story about not only the entrepreneurial spirit of running and owning a shop, but also your work with Cashmere People yarns. And I'm gonna let you tell that story because I'm actually not really sure about your relationship with them and how that works. So do you want to start off maybe with Cashmere People yarns, and then, or do you want to start from the beginning, which is how you got here
Sure.
and then moved there?
Yeah, this is PortFiber. I'm celebrating 10 years.
That's amazing.
Of ownership in October. I bought the shop from the previous owner who I worked for like 3 years, Melody Hackett.
Yes.
And like I learned spinning there. I just was like looking for a knitting shop, looking for yarn, and
I know. I'm actually having a really good time right now, which is Casey's lovely dog.
Being naughty.
Being
Maybe I
naughty.
should get him to go lay down.
We can try. We took care of the rascal, although I was thoroughly enjoying being nibbled.
It's very nibbly.
Yeah. And I will definitely include some shots of Jackson for you all to enjoy.
You can follow Jackson at Good Big Boy on Instagram.
Oh, maybe we should focus this more on Jackson. Oh, that's the dog treat. I see it happening. Counter cruiser. Very savvy. But we'll just jump back in. And so we were kind of describing kind of being an apprentice.
Yes, and at the time, Bristol Ivy was working for Mel. So she taught me to dye. Another woman, Martha, taught me to spin, and then I started interning there. And then I kept on taking on more responsibilities. And at the time, I went to school to be a teacher. And I was like waitressing and nannying and working this job and working like a sewing shop job and just kind of like patching it all together.
Yeah.
But was able to kind of like slowly let those other things go and take on more responsibility here, and I bought it in October 2013.
Oh, congratulations, and
Thank
well
you.
done you, because 10 years is no drop in the bucket for running a business, and then especially doing it through the pandemic.
Yeah.
So awesome.
Feels good.
Yeah, I know. And now it's kind of like a great opportunity for a little celebration. And not only did you do the dye work and you carry other brands, you also teach, and you cover a variety of things: spinning, dyeing, and weaving. So we'll kind of take a little look around the shop, but again, I wanted you to have the opportunity to tell us about what you're up to. And I've worked with you a couple different times in different retreats and different vendor situations, and I do find the kind of bringing together of both the local experience and then also the Cashmere People yarns very interesting. So I'm going to let you kind of guide where you'd like to go next.
Yeah, well, I got involved with Cashmere People yarns in 2016. They're a group of hand spinners in Tajikistan and Afghanistan, and they started spinning maybe 8 years before I met them. The whole project was funded by an Italian agriculture grant.
Oh, okay.
And it was focused on like sustainable agriculture, empowering women. For most of the people who are spinning, it's their first time making an income. So it's very impactful in their lives. And when I heard about the project, it was through Peter Haggerty, who used to own Peace Fleece.
Right, yeah.
So he was in conversation with Leva Brent, who was the grant writer for the project. And the group leaders for the spinning groups, there's like 7 spinning groups in Tajikistan, and each group has a group leader. So they had 4 group leaders in 2016 come. I think they came to do Vogue knitting.
Oh, right.
Maybe it was like, yeah, that's usually in January. My timeline's a little off, but they were touring like the East Coast. They went to Vogue knitting, and they like went to different spinning mills in New England, and they're kind of like scoping out the market in the US. And they stopped here, and I host a spinning group called Port Spinners. So they came and did a talk with a spinning group about the project, and they had some of their initial yarns, which were more like an Aran weight, for sale, and they had a translator with them because they needed it. But I don't know, like that gathering was really sweet, and just like the opportunity to like be in conversation in that way, and like the conversation you have and just like smiles and like appreciation of craft and skill, and it was really cool. But that was just like a social gathering. I was later approached by Peter. He asked if he could have tea with me, and I'm like, yeah, of course, like whatever.
Okay.
And asked if I wanted to be their wholesale rep, and part of that would be going to Tajikistan for 2 weeks to meet all of the spinners. So how could I say no to that?
That's right.
But like I didn't go to school for business.
Yeah.
I was maybe, so it was 2017, I think, that I traveled to Tajikistan. So I was 4 years in business. Yeah, that's right. 3 years in business, really. I mean, owning the business is just like me saying yes to something.
Right.
Without knowing what I'm doing. It's just like making it work. But I got to travel there in March of 2017. For 2 weeks I traveled with Liba, got to meet all of the spinning groups and just kind of experience life in Tajikistan in the wintertime. It's like definitely a different world, different lives. They work so hard, and they have so little, and they are like just so welcoming and generous, and definitely put perspective on my life. When I came home from that trip, I was like, wow, like we have everything.
Yeah.
We just have everything.
Yeah, I was really moved by the talk you came and did, and I was really, am I in shot? Just Casey.
Hi.
I was really, I just felt really lucky that I was connected and you were willing to come up and talk about your trip with photographs and stories. And there was a lot of elements that resonated with me. And you talked about that one thing, being able to communicate with people without language, because we're using a variety of different language cues and elements to talk about something that's very important. But you told a story about traversing through Tajikistan, and I didn't know if you wanted to share that, which had to do with, you had pictures of the roads that you were traveling on, and also some ideas about, there was like a landslide or something. And I think why that resonated for me was because of just space and time and landscape, and how, how involved that can be for bringing people together, and for fiber, and I'm going to use the word harsh, because the landscape was harsh, and it required a preparedness, right?
Yes.
So do you want to just talk a little bit about?
Yeah, there was a part of the trip, so I traveled in the north for a week or so, and then we took a trip to the southern groups, which was on the Afghan border. And Jackson is not happy to be tied up.
No.
Yeah, and so the southern groups are more isolated than the groups in the north. And getting there is harder. The roads are even less maintained.
Right.
So we travel for like 15 hours through the mountains, the Himalaya mountains, which were like, the whole time I was like, oh.
Right.
And I had like knitting, but I couldn't knit because I was like in the back seat and that was not working for me.
Right.
So a lot of just like staring at the beautiful mountains, but it was March and our drivers were talking about the avalanches. We were driving along the Panj River, and that separates Afghanistan from Tajikistan. So like looking at the Afghan side, you could see foot trodden like paths over avalanches. Like they weren't clear. They didn't even have the resources really to clear the avalanches, and people were on foot. Like people were walking miles
to do the thing they needed to do.
And so we were driving through cleared avalanches, and I was like counting. At one point I started counting, and I like stopped after 40. Like,
oh my
God. Kind of unreal. And the drivers, were talking about like digging themselves out of avalanches, like being kind of having a preparedness and like stopping and rolling down the windows and listening, and it was a long ride to the southern groups.
I just love the idea. I've talked about this with my husband, who is an ice climber, and he's traveled to lots of different rugged spaces, but how relatable our life and our interest in wool actually ends up taking us to these really adventurous, isolated.
Like the goats that this fiber is from are in those mountains. Like they are grazing those mountains. They're like coming out of the mountains and going into the mountains. And and this like this grant that funded this project, they're cashmere and fine fibers are often they were selling their fibers to the Chinese market at a lower rate and like a not as good quality. Like they were shearing their goats instead of combing, so all the hairs were in there. It required more processing. But I remember Liba talking about this grant specifically focusing on what's it called? Shepherding? I don't know, like just small flocks instead of like just pummeling the land with all of these creatures that are just going to decimate the vegetation. So like farming in a way, or like shepherding in a way that is sustainable to the land.
So it is goat fiber.
Yes.
So we'll go to the yarn now, because people do love yarn. And I love this yarn, and I'm knitting with it now, and I brought my project. So
cool.
Show you.
And these two, I don't know if these are in frame.
I think they are,
Those two sweaters are knit in the Kashgora. So it's Kashgora, which is a goat. It's a cross between a cashmere producing goat and the local Tajik goat, which is kind of like mohair. Okay. But the cashmere goats were imported in the 80s from Russia.
Okay.
And then they were crossbred with the local goat over and over until it became its own thing.
Okay.
So the Kashgora goat produces a little more fiber than the cashmere goat, so that's good because you're just getting more bang for your buck, essentially. But it's super fine like cashmere, but it's also got a little bit of shine. It's a little drapier. And
so the Kashgora is coming from Tajikistan.
Yes.
And that's all spun in Tajik. That's a Tajikistan thing.
It's a Tajik product, but it's also, they have it de-haired in Afghanistan.
Okay.
So it's sent to Afghanistan for processing, sent back. It's all undyed, but it's been de-haired. And then the spinners just spin it up, and then there's 3 or 4 hand dyers.
Okay. Oh, okay.
They're just dyeing in their kitchens.
Right.
But they're trying to build a dehairing facility in Tajikistan so it can all stay local and not have to travel as far.
Right, and cross borders. And
having a dehairing facility would also create some more jobs. So they're working on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the Kashgora is primarily a fingering sport weight.
Yeah.
And that's the only weight, right?
Yeah, it's all, the constant is 100 grams. Every skein's 100 grams, but since it's hand spun, there's like a range of yardage for each weight. So it's like you could have a light sport or a heavy sport, depending on how many yards are in that 100 grams.
Okay, so you really need to kind of understand your grist a little bit.
Yeah.
Like weight and then...
Yeah, and sometimes if people are buying for like a sweater, I say like try to find the same spinner, because it'll be a similar twist, and find the same yardage range.
Right. And speaking of spinner, and I've talked about this yarn before on kind of my general knitting experience, each of the skeins is labeled with the spinner, and I don't have my reading glasses, but it does share a little bit about that person and their work, and then also, is there anything else? Oh yeah, and it gives you quite a bit of information. So gives you the yardage and the meters, ounces and grams, etc. So, and then
it's a pretty good range of colors too.
Yeah, it has a beautiful range. And is the fiber that's developed grown by the Kashgora, is it a pure white? Because some of this looks like
these are the naturals. So there's white and brown, and there's also like an in between.
Ooh,
color.
that one speaks to my soul.
Called barley.
Barley, yeah.
I got to name the colors too, which was a really fun part of it. And trying to like incorporate the Tajikistan landscape and like places.
Right. Yeah, because it isn't. I mean that calls up a lot, you know. So because I'm looking at some of these and I'm like, that is an over dyed
like a brown
but because it really just makes these colors dance, but there's a lot of rich vibrancy. They're very saturated, and again, like you said, there's just a beautiful range.
And like this one is definitely dyed on white because it's very bright.
Cool. Thank you. I would keep holding on to it. You can see how it's so funny as I'm thinking about this interview. We're talking about yarn, but we also we're talking about language and connection and all of those things that enable us to find commonality and connect with craft. Dance takes us to these different places where we can really have an opportunity to be reflective, and so again, like I said, I'm just so grateful that you took some time to share that with us. And I try to recognize this with each of the interviews I do, because your time is money and it's valuable when you're an entrepreneur and you own a shop. And so I am deeply grateful that you gave me some of that.
Thank you.
And I hope that I can exchange it in some way for something beautiful today. And also, I really hope that this gives people an opportunity to find something interesting, to travel to a new place or support a group of a different way of living in the world, and how we can do that. So I'm really grateful.
Yes,
so thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity. And say yes. say yes to things.
Yeah, right? And see where you end up.
Yeah. Yay.
and welcome to the fiber and knitting portion of the episode. I want to reiterate my deep gratitude that I have for those that contribute financially through Patreon and what that allows me to do and how that encourages me and also keeps me humble. So thank you so much for investing in this creative project with your money. I also always want to say thank you for those that share comments and insight. I read everything and I am so grateful that you take the time to do that. And again, it is very encouraging and motivating to receive such positive feedback that people are enjoying the vlog and finding their own path of creativity by using it as a springboard. So thank you. Let's see. I finished the Zora, and I had previously stated on my last episode that I really wanted to have it done in time to take to Scotland because that's where it all started. But I have to say that, here, I'll put it on. While I am very happy to have this done and I really enjoyed knitting this project, I was not excited about it when I finished. And this is actually in line with my first Zora that I knit. It had never been a favorite sweater. I knit that in a deep chocolate natural Icelandic brown from Reynolds Lopi and like blue and pink for the yoke portion. And again, I thought it was so interesting that I was still averse when I finished it, and yet that previous sweater, and I have a feeling this sweater is going to grow on me. There were some things that I don't know, I just resisted it. I just was like, it's not my favorite. And one of them was the construction. You can see here my seaming experience. I'm not going to rip that out. I really wish that I had leaned into my wool wisdom skill sets and constructed the sleeves in the round and then joined them with this raglan shaping. This is knit from the bottom up, and then you join the sleeves and knit the whole yoke to finish. I just heard something beep, but I'm not sure what it was. Anyway, cross your fingers. It hasn't continued to beep, so I don't think it is the carbon monoxide alarm. Let me check my camera though. Phew. So as I was saying, you knit this bottom up. It is knit flat, and you knit the sleeves flat, and I wish I had knit them in the round and joined them as I would for a yoke and then done the raglan decreasing as written, because it would have saved me some heartbreak and harrowing understanding of the fabric. So this fabric, because it is a slip stitch pattern, the edges are not clear, and so it's very hard to decide if you're picking up the right stitch and is that one of the yarn forwards, which made this very wonky. And in retrospect, as I was saying, leaning into my wool wisdom and skills, I could have figured this out, but I don't know why I didn't. Anyway, bottom up, sleeves knit flat, joined at the yoke, and then you pick up and knit the button bands. Now, they recommend crochet. I just did a garter stitch button band. These buttons are from the original sweater I brought back from Orkney. That was a Icelandic yoke with chocolate, brown, and tan and white. And they went on my other Zora, and now they're on this Zora. So the buttons have served me well and have been with me for 27 years. And here they continue to serve a wonderful purpose. So what else was I going to say about it? Yeah, not my favorite. Will I take it to Scotland? I don't think I'm going to take it to Scotland. I think it's going to go live as a cabin sweater in the cabin that we share and take care of for friends. And then I won't have to tote things back and forth all the time. And it won't be, it's not a precious item. A lot of the sweaters I knit don't, they're kind of a rugged working wardrobe kind of piece that I can canoe in, I can walk in, I can get in the rain, snow, soot from the fire, and then whatever happens to come my way at school, which isn't always runny noses. And so the clothing I wear, when I choose to make things, I like things that clean up easy and have some strength to them and wherewithal. That being said, when you see one of the cast-ons I did, that doesn't quite fit in, but every once in a while I like to, just enjoy the potential outcome of sophistication. But I would never call this knit, this particular knit, anything other than like a canoe sweater, a hiking sweater, walking outdoor sweater, getting in the soot, snow, and who knows what else sweater. And so with that being said, that was probably a lot of the reason that I really didn't perseverate on the perfection or the finishing. I just wanted it done. I wanted to be able to wear it. And as it came together, initially when it first came off the needles, I was like, oh, yee. But once I got the button bands on and once I blocked it, so I got it fully wet, spun out, stretched it, and then I pinned the button bands. It took on more for me. So very much a nostalgic knit, hearkening back to some of my original experiences with wool. It felt good to kind of go back there and revisit that. And and it knit up fairly quickly. So I knit the whole thing in Aliphas Lopi, and I will have a Ravelry project page for it. And yeah, I knit it on a US 10.5. So I went up the needle size and just went for it. So that's the Zora finished. So with that, I needed to make some decisions about what to cast on next. I do still have the Frokengard on the needles, which I'm working on the sleeve, and I just need to do it. But however, this gave me an opportunity to dream a little bit and go through my stash. Ultimately, I landed on knitting from the Knitted Kalevala by Jenna Costet, and I am knitting and I had kind of highlighted this sweater, the Poyolan Nito sweater. So I went through stash and I decided I would work with the Tinda yarn I ordered, and I am knitting the yoke. The main color of the yoke I am knitting in this kind of yellowy lichen color, and I'm using the dark brown as the contrast color work. And then I am using navy for the bottom. I really hope I like this juxtaposition because I'm kind of a, main color, contrast color, although I'm knit Marie Woolen, but blocks of color coming together I tend to like to be similar. Anyway, we'll see. But so far, I'm really enjoying it. I like these three colors together. I like that I'm doing something different for the yoke that isn't necessarily in a natural colorway. I'm using the navy. This particular pattern is designed top down, and it does have raglan shaping. One of the things that I tried to figure out to see if I could construct it differently is getting rid of the raglan and just knitting it as a yoked pattern. Ultimately, I decided not to do that, and I am following the instructions for the raglan shaping. I am not knitting the ribbing at the top, so I just cast on, did a rolled neck collar. So instead of casting on, I cast on for the small at the top, and then it increased to the medium. And the other thing that I noticed is in the increasing of the pattern on the front and back of the yoke, the pattern is increasing at different rates, so it's slightly asymmetrical. So the pattern section on the right only gets to a certain point, and the pattern section on the left gets further, and so it's kind of unbalanced. There's more of the pattern on this side. So I am trying to figure that out and see if I can center it and then have equal amounts on either side. It's very helpful in the book. Lina does provide a Dropbox downloadable section for all the charts with a password. So I went ahead and did that, and they have charted each of the sizes for the increasing on the raglan. So I am doing the medium. I may not increase the whole medium, I'm unsure, but again, you get a lot of play when you are knitting top down, and then you can kind of work the numbers once you know what the stitch count is for your patterning. So I'm working away on that, and Tinda I've talked about before. It comes from Hillesvåg, which is a Swedish company. I'm using their Solia from the Norse Pelsgarn. I want to say Spelsau, but that's a Norwegian sheep. And one of the things, and I've talked about before, is that this yarn tends to have a gray undertone to it as part of the natural fibers and natural color of the yarn. And so when it's over dyed with color, it gets this very sparkly, dynamic, lots of depth. And that's why I really love this particular brand of yarn. And I also find the price point to be good. This is 260 meters per 100 grams. This originally is knit in tuku wool from Finland, and so I think they have a similar aesthetic. So that's on the go. And as I was talking about rugged working wardrobes, I did cast on the Twigs and Roots by Tati Lutzak. I am using Nutiden plates from Honok och Air in Sweden. Wow, it's a lot of Swedish wool on the go here. And I originally had purchased, you might remember, yarn for this project. Let me get it here. This color, which is some dyed fibers that are then blended together. And I had purchased like a chocolatey brown, like a fawn brown, like a light milk chocolate. But I was finding it wasn't really showing up on this. I don't think I have any here. And so I luckily had a friend send me some Nutiden in this deep chocolate, and I've paired those two together now. So this is going to be the main body. I will not be managing the firewood, or probably even wearing this to school with this being the main color of the color work, because it is lighter. And this is going to be the pattern. And you do hold this together with mohair. And so I'm using Knitting for Olive, and these are the two colors. And so I didn't order the dark brown with the intent of using the chocolate, but I think that they work out just fine. Adds a little glint. I am knitting this on a US 3. There's not much to speak of. This is the cast on. I'm knitting this on a US 3, which is a half a needle size up from the original. I think it's then on 1.5 and 2.5, and I knit it on a 2 and a 3. And that's on the go. So I don't remember what size I cast on, but again, as it's top down, can fudge it here and there should you need to. I am continuing to work on the Decrofter's Cap, and this is by Wilma Malcolmson. It was one of the Shetland Wool Week hat patterns. This is my 3rd time knitting it. It's my 2nd time in this color. I just need to start the decreases for the crown. That's coming up. And I think that's really it. I did have a little bit of cast on invigoration because I was so excited to get this done, and I was really excited about my stash and going through it and trying to decide what yarns I wanted to work with. And so that was some hard decision making. And finally, my Lundrum had been out of commission because the footman gave away the connectors, and Rob recently fixed that for me. And so I am excited to scratch that spinning itch upcoming here at the end of this month. And as part of that, when I went to PortFiber, as you saw earlier, I did pick up a few treasures. And one of them was this Manx Romney mohair in the natural colors, which is so beautiful, this kind of beigey, cookie doughy, oatmeal-y color. And then I picked up the same natural colorway. This is a Southdown Shetland silk. Both of these are custom blends that Casey has done for her shop, and she does dye on them. And I'll hopefully be able to detail some of that as I'm going to the Fiber Frolic in a week, 2 weeks. So we'll take a look at some of the dyers and what's been happening, but Casey does carry this in her dyed colored colorways on her website. You can check that out, or you can visit her at the shop, or you can visit her at Fiber Frolic, and or I think she does Vogue Knitting Live, so that's really exciting for her. I also picked up 2 skeins of the Cashmere People yarn, but that is going to a friend, and that is going in the natural colorway, which is kind of, again, beigey brown. And I am working with that particular yarn on my Trondheim cowl, though I haven't picked that up in a while. So there's a lot to think about as we approach the summer. I am attending the Fiber Frolic, and I look forward to bringing you some content around what that event looks like, who the vendors are. I did do that last year. We'll see how this year unfolds. And then I'm headed to Scotland and Yukon and Sweden. And so I wanted to, again, thank patrons for investing and providing many needed resources in looking at how to carry all my equipment, the type of equipment I need to document some of the stories that are happening for Fiber Trek. So again, thank you, and I will keep you updated. On that note, I'm going to bid you a fond farewell and wish you many blessings, and I will look forward to seeing you next time. Take care. Bye.